crumbling remains of Green Hollow Asylum loomed in the moonlight, its skeletal frame a silent testament to decades of suffering and despair. Nathan, Jenna, and Mike stood nervously at its rusted gates, their breath misting in the chill night air. "Are we really doing this?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. "Yeah," Mike responded with forced bravado. "It's just a silly urban legend." Nathan shivered, wrapping his jacket tighter around himself. He couldn't shake the feeling they were making a huge mistake. Still, they'd come this far, and turning back now felt like admitting defeat. "Come on," Mike said impatiently, pushing through a broken gap in the fence. They reluctantly followed, stepping onto grounds that felt cursed, untouched by daylight or sanity in years. Inside, decay had taken hold of every corner. Broken glass littered the floor, crunching ominously underfoot. Paint peeled in twisted curls from the walls, revealing dark stains underneath. "What exactly are we looking for again?" Jenna whispered, clutching an old notebook they'd found buried deep in her grandmother's attic, filled with strange symbols and unsettling incantations. "Answers," Mike replied cryptically, his voice edgy. "Proof that the stories about this place are real, or something much worse," Nathan muttered nervously, glancing at shadows flickering just beyond the reach of their flashlights. Ignoring Nathan's anxiety, Mike led them deeper inside. They navigated through a labyrinth of derelict corridors, stepping over broken furniture, rusted wheelchairs, and piles of debris that hid decades of history beneath layers of grime. Finally, they reached the grand recreational hall, a cavernous space dominated by decay and silence. Jenna shivered, clutching the notebook tightly. "This is the spot," she said quietly. Exactly as described in the notes. They formed a hesitant circle, Jenna at the center. As she opened the notebook, the air thickened ominously. The faint smell of mildew intensified, and somewhere deep within the asylum something stirred. Jenna began chanting, her voice hesitant but steady. The words felt heavy and unnatural, echoing with a power that grew stronger with each syllable. Soon, her voice shifted into something deep, unfamiliar, and authoritative. "Jenna, that's enough," Nathan urged, panic creeping into his voice. But Jenna's eyes had glazed over. She appeared to be in a trance, words flowing relentlessly from her lips. Suddenly, the temperature plunged, icy breaths visible as their surroundings darkened even further. Mike tried breaking the circle, but an invisible barrier hurled him backward, knocking him breathless to the floor. "Stop it, Jenna!" Mike shouted, fear evident, but Jenna's chanting grew louder, echoing grotesquely through the abandoned asylum. Shadows emerged from walls, floor, and ceiling, twisting human-shaped entities with empty faces and whispering mouths. They circled menacingly, closing tighter with every passing moment. "Help me!" Jenna suddenly screamed, breaking briefly from the trance. Her eyes wide with terror, she struggled futilely against an unseen force. Nathan lunged forward again, only to collide violently with an invisible force field that sent him sprawling across the floor, pain radiating through his bones. Mike rushed to Jenna, but an elongated shadow struck him, knocking him unconscious instantly. His body fell limp to the ground, enveloped immediately by shadowy hands. "Mike!" Nathan shouted desperately. He ran toward Jenna, but an unseen force slammed him into a wall, pinning him. "You have summoned us," a dark voice echoed, filling every corner of the asylum. The shadows coalesced into a single monstrous figure with burning crimson eyes. "We hunger. Let us go," Nathan pleaded, blood trickling down his forehead. "Too late," it hissed cruelly, moving toward Jenna. "You opened the door. Now you will join us." Nathan frantically grabbed the notebook Jenna had dropped, reading aloud random incantations, desperate to find something to reverse the horror. With each word, pain surged through his body. "Stop!" the creature bellowed, the asylum trembling violently. Jenna collapsed unconscious, released from her torment. Nathan continued to chant through unbearable agony. The entity shrieked, shattering glass and splintering wood, then dispersed into countless shadows once more. Silence enveloped the building as quickly as it had been disrupted. Nathan staggered toward Jenna, lifting her unconscious form. They stumbled outside, leaving Mike behind, vanished without a trace. Years passed, but neither Nathan nor Jenna could forget the horrors of Green Hollow Asylum. Rumors persisted about strange figures haunting its halls and mysterious disappearances near its grounds. Nathan and Jenna knew the truth. They had glimpsed into darkness itself, forever marked by what they'd awakened that terrible night. And deep down, they both knew it was only a matter of time before the asylum would claim what remained of their sanity, finally calling them back into its endless nightmare. The decrepit halls of Ravens Creek Asylum echoed with memories that refused to die. Once a place meant to heal, now it stood as a ghostly relic, claimed only by decay and whispers of madness. For Jenny, Luke, and Ava, it was the perfect backdrop for their late-night adventure, fueled by curiosity and youthful bravado. The local legend spoke of a patient named Clara Sinclair, who had mysteriously disappeared 50 years ago during an unauthorized ritual performed by the asylum's deranged staff. Some claimed her restless spirit still wandered these corridors, trapped in an eternal nightmare. "You sure about this?" Ava whispered, her flashlight trembling. "Absolutely," Luke replied confidently, masking his unease. "It's just an old building." A distant door creaked open, echoing through the halls. Luke froze, his bravado flickering. "Probably just wind," Jenny said, her voice failing to convince even herself. They cautiously moved deeper, their footsteps stirring dust that hadn't been disturbed in decades. Suddenly, Ava halted, her eyes widening. "Did you hear that?" A faint sobbing drifted from the end of the hallway, soft but filled with anguish. Luke swallowed hard, struggling to hide his sudden fear. "Hello?" he called out hesitantly. His voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence that followed. "Please," the whisper came again, this time closer, more desperate. Driven by a mix of curiosity and compassion, Ava moved forward, following the sound toward the shadow-draped stairway descending into darkness. Luke reached out to stop her, but she was already stepping downward. As they descended, the air thickened, heavy with an inexplicable dread. At the bottom of the stairs, their flashlights revealed the asylum's basement, an oppressive labyrinth of rusted doors and forgotten rooms. "Over here," Ava whispered, drawn involuntarily toward an iron door, slightly ajar. Inside, the room was freezing. The walls, lined with peeling paint and strange symbols, scratched violently into the stone. In the corner crouched a frail figure, translucent and flickering, "Help me," the ghostly figure pleaded, eyes wide with eternal torment. Ava gasped, frozen in horror. "It's her," Luke muttered. It's Clara." Before they could react, the door slammed shut, trapping them. Panic erupted as Luke pounded desperately against it. The room suddenly darkened further, the figure of Clara materializing clearly, her pale face twisted in despair. She pointed accusingly. "You shouldn't have come," she wailed mournfully. "Now he'll never let you leave." "Who?" Jenny stammered, tears streaking her cheeks. "The doctor," Clara whispered fearfully. Behind her, shadows twisted into a grotesque form, eyes burning like hellfire. "New patients," the shadow croaked. "Welcome to your forever home." The trio screamed as darkness enveloped them completely. When Ava awoke, she was alone, shivering violently in a tiny, darkened cell. Her flashlight was dead, leaving her blind in the suffocating blackness. She stumbled to her feet, feeling along the walls. Voices whispered around her, indistinct yet filled with sorrow and desperation. "Luke! Jenny!" Ava called out weakly, her voice echoing back mockingly. Suddenly, a dim light flickered to life at the end of the corridor, revealing a shadowy figure standing motionless, staring. "Who are you?" Ava demanded, her courage barely holding together. "The doctor awaits," the shadow murmured, stepping slowly backward into the darkness. Terrified but determined to find her friends, Ava cautiously followed. The corridor twisted impossibly, changing direction with each blink of her eyes. Eventually, she stumbled into a grotesque operating theatre where rusted surgical instruments lay scattered beside a stained table. Jenny and Luke were strapped to the table, eyes wide with terror, gagged and immobilized. "Welcome," echoed a chilling voice from the darkness. The doctor stepped forward, his appearance skeletal and grotesque, a monstrous grin splitting his pale face. "Let them go," Ava pleaded desperately. "They chose their fate," the doctor hissed. "As did you." Clara's ghost suddenly appeared beside Ava, her expression filled with sadness and resignation. "I tried to warn you." "Help us," Ava begged Clara, who simply shook her head mournfully. "He owns us all," Clara whispered, her form fading slowly. "Run, if you can." With newfound panic, Ava turned and fled, heart pounding in her ears. She navigated the twisting halls blindly, pursued relentlessly by tortured souls crying out for help. Bursting through the entrance doors, Ava collapsed on the wet grass outside, gasping for breath. She turned to see the asylum doors slowly closing on their own, sealing away Luke and Jenny forever. Years passed, but Ava could never escape the memory. Nightmares haunted her sleep, filled with the anguished faces of her lost friends and Clara's sorrowful gaze. Eventually, unable to bear the guilt any longer, she returned to Ravens Creek Asylum. As she stepped through the crumbling gates, the asylum welcomed her back with open arms. The doctor stood waiting, grinning coldly. "Welcome home, Ava. We've been expecting you." The whispers from within the asylum had finally claimed her, binding her forever to its haunted halls. Blackridge Asylum loomed ominously atop the misty hill, its shattered windows like empty eye sockets gazing malevolently at the world below. For decades, locals whispered of cruel experiments conducted within its walls, and of a patient named Eleanor Blackwell, whose tragic death left behind an angry, restless spirit. Her wrathful presence was rumoured to ensnare anyone foolish enough to wander near, their fate sealed by agonising deaths, their bodies never found. Tonight, curiosity had drawn 4 friends, Sophie, Ryan, Alex and Megan, to this cursed place. The stories had always intrigued them, and despite warnings, they felt compelled to uncover the truth. As they approached, the rusted gates groaned open without a touch, inviting them inside. An unnatural chill enveloped the air, raising goosebumps across their skin. Still, they stepped forward, drawn inexorably into the shadows of the asylum. "Feels wrong here," Megan whispered nervously, wrapping her arms around herself. "Relax," Ryan said, feigning confidence. "They're just stories." Inside, the asylum seemed alive with malicious intent. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and faint whispers drifted from unseen corners, unintelligible, yet disturbingly clear in their menace. "Did you hear that?" Sophie asked suddenly, eyes wide with fear. "Hear what?" Alex responded, visibly shaken. "Someone whispering my name," she breathed, glancing around anxiously. Suddenly, a distant door slammed violently, echoing through the empty halls. Ryan jumped, his bravado instantly evaporating. "Maybe we shouldn't be here." But before they could retreat, another door burst open, revealing a corridor bathed in pale moonlight. At the far end stood a shadowy figure, translucent yet vividly real, eyes burning with an intense fury. It was Eleanor. "You came for me," the ghostly voice hissed, chilling their blood. "Now you'll stay forever." Terrified, the group scattered, fleeing blindly through twisted corridors. Sophie and Alex ducked into what appeared to be a patient room, slamming the door behind them. They realized too late that the walls were moving, slowly shrinking the room. Panic surged through them as they pounded desperately against the cold concrete. "It's closing in!" Alex screamed, feeling the crushing weight as the walls pressed tighter. Sophie cried out in terror, trapped as the space narrowed relentlessly. Darkness swallowed their screams, leaving only silence. Ryan and Megan heard their friends' cries vanish and ran frantically in the opposite direction. Ryan stumbled, dropping his flashlight, plunging them into near total darkness. "Ryan, hurry!" Megan cried, gripping his arm desperately. "I'm trying," he gasped, scrambling back up. But an unseen force violently tore him from Megan's grip, dragging him screaming into the abyss. His cries echoed painfully, then abruptly ceased. Megan was alone. She staggered forward blindly, heart pounding. Ahead, a faint glow appeared. Driven by desperation, she moved toward it, finding herself in an ancient operating room, its surfaces stained from countless horrors. Rusty instruments lay ominously arranged beside the table, which still bore dark, dried blood. "I've waited so long," Eleanor's cold voice whispered. Megan turned, frozen with terror, as Eleanor materialized fully. The ghostly woman's face twisted in anguish and rage. "What do you want?" Megan whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "Retribution," Eleanor answered, pointing at the table. "Lie down." Megan shook her head wildly, backing away, but chains rattled to life, snaking around her limbs and dragging her to the table. Eleanor stood over her, eyes blazing. "Please," Megan sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. "Did they listen when I begged?" Eleanor hissed bitterly. "Did they show mercy when they strapped me here?" Megan felt icy pain surge through her veins, paralyzing her body as Eleanor's spectral fingers traced horrifying symbols across her forehead. Visions flooded Megan's mind, torturous memories of Eleanor's past, experiments and betrayals. She screamed until her voice was raw, but no sound escaped her throat. Eventually, darkness consumed Megan entirely. Her struggle ceased, and her body vanished, leaving no trace behind. Days later, search parties combed through every inch of Blackridge Asylum, finding no trace of the missing friends. Yet, each night after, lights flickered inside, and chilling laughter echoed across the hill, confirming the truth. Eleanor Blackwell would forever wait, ensnaring the curious and punishing the foolish, bound eternally to the horrors of Blackridge. And as the years passed, the number of missing souls grew, each new victim adding to Eleanor's collection, their anguished spirits echoing through the asylum, forever lost, forever trapped.